She slept with my stepfather while my dad was dying of cancer in the next room. It started with silence. Not the peaceful kind that fills a home in the early morning, but the heavy, pressing kind that made the air feel thicker than it should. You know the kind. Like walking into a room right after someone was arguing, except no one says a word. I remember the coffee brewing slower that day. My hand around the mug didn't feel right, like it wasn't mine. My wife, Lena, was by the sink, pretending to scroll through her phone, her jaw clenched so tightly I could almost hear it crack. My dad was in the guest room. He'd moved in 2 months ago when the doctors told us there was nothing more they could do. Stage 4. Aggressive. Fast. We offered. He refused at first, said he didn't want to be a burden. But eventually, Lena convinced him. She was always good at convincing people. "It'll be easier for hospice to come here," she'd said, her hand gently resting on his shoulder. "You won't be alone." I loved her a little more in that moment. And maybe that was the problem. I loved her blindly. The day he moved in, she made his bed, stocked his nightstand with ginger ale and hard candies, and brought him warm soup from the kitchen like it was second nature. My mother had died years ago, and I remember thinking how lucky I was that my wife had taken her place so seamlessly. It was almost beautiful, how Lena cared for him. Wiped his forehead. Held the straw to his mouth. Smoothed his blankets. I watched her fall asleep in the chair beside him one night, a book open in her lap, and my heart ached with gratitude. But then things shifted. Subtly at first. My stepfather, Frank, started visiting more. He'd been married to my mom for almost 15 years before she passed. Never had kids of his own, but always acted like he was doing me a favor just by being around. He was supposed to stay at a motel while he was in town to visit Dad. But Lena invited him to stay. "It'll save money," she said. "And he's family." I didn't argue. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. He took the basement room. Came up late. Stayed later. And slowly, the quiet in our house turned cold. I started waking up to find Lena already dressed, her hair done, coffee mugs washed and drying. She'd say she couldn't sleep and went down to the basement to watch TV. Frank couldn't figure out how to use the streaming app, she said once, laughing it off. The laughter didn't reach her eyes. I chalked it up to stress. Dad was getting worse. His appetite gone, his skin yellowing, bones too sharp against his sheets. We were losing him. But one night, as I passed the guest room, I heard something that made my chest freeze. It was my father's voice. Fragile. Breathless. But unmistakably broken. "Please, not while I'm still breathing." I stopped. Pressed my palm against the wood of the door. No one responded. Only silence again. Except now, it had teeth. I didn't ask. I couldn't. I didn't want to know what he meant. What he saw. What he heard. But from that moment, everything changed. I started noticing how Lena avoided eye contact with me when I brought up my dad. How Frank always seemed to linger too close to her when she was doing dishes. How she flinched when I touched her shoulder. And every time I looked at my father, I saw it in his eyes, a kind of sorrow that had nothing to do with dying. It was betrayal. Not just mine. His too. And I wasn't sure who he pitied more. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of our bed, listening to the tick of the hallway clock, the rustle of linens in the room down the hall, the soft creak of footsteps on the stairs. I told myself it was grief. That I was imagining things. But somewhere deep in my gut, I already knew. Something had happened. Something unspeakable. And I was about to find out just how deep betrayal could go. The next morning, Dad wouldn't look me in the eye. He tried to act like nothing happened, asked for tea, shuffled the remote, mumbled thanks when I adjusted his pillows. But his eyes stayed on the window, blinking too often. Too fast. I watched him for a long moment. I didn't ask again. I just nodded, quietly brought him his tea, and stepped into the hallway. Lena was in the kitchen, barefoot on the cold tile, wiping down the counter like she was punishing it. The rag squeaked against the surface, again and again. "You okay?" I asked. She didn't look up. Didn't sleep. Me neither. She turned on the faucet, rinsed the cloth, wrung it out like she was wringing someone's neck. I watched her jaw move side to side, a nervous tic she only ever had when she was lying. And yet I said nothing. I left for work late that day. Kissed her forehead like always. Pretended it was normal. Pretended she didn't flinch. I didn't make it to work. I drove instead. Aimless. Circling the same blocks. The steering wheel slick under my hands. I couldn't get my father's voice out of my head. Not while I'm still breathing. What had he seen? I ended up at my brother's place, David. Younger by 5 years. Same sharp eyes as Dad. He opened the door in sweats and confusion. "You look like hell," he said. "Can I come in?" He didn't ask why. Just moved aside. We sat at his kitchen table in silence for a long while. I watched dust drift through a shaft of morning light. Watched his dog pad in and out, tail wagging, unaware that the world was tilting beneath us. "I think something's going on," I said finally. David didn't speak, just leaned back in his chair. Waiting. Between Lena and Frank. He blinked. Once. "Frank? Our Frank?" I nodded. "Jesus. Yeah." David rubbed his jaw, looking like he'd swallowed something sour. "What makes you think that?" I hesitated. I wanted to protect Dad's last sliver of dignity. But I needed someone to carry this weight with me. I heard Dad say something. Last night. Something broken. Begging. "You sure?" I nodded. He said, "Not while I'm still breathing." David closed his eyes. Swore under his breath. "You think they, in the house? With Dad there?" "I don't want to believe it." He opened his eyes. "But you do." And in that moment, I realized I did. He offered me a beer. It was barely noon. I took it anyway. Neither of us said what we were really thinking. If Dad knew, if he had to hear it, then maybe this wasn't new. Maybe it had been happening for weeks. Maybe longer. And suddenly, all the puzzle pieces I had pushed aside started snapping together with a sickening click. The late-night laundry. The sudden grocery runs. The basement light that stayed on long after I went to bed. David leaned forward. "You need to talk to him. Direct. No tiptoeing. He deserves that." I nodded. Drained the bottle. Left. That night, I waited until Lena went to bed. Her footsteps soft, deliberate. Her door closed. I stood outside Dad's room. Knocked once. "Come in," he rasped. He looked smaller than he had that morning. As if some part of him had already left. I sat beside him. "Dad, I need you to be honest with me." His eyes didn't move from the ceiling. Did something happen? Between Lena and Frank? For a long time, he said nothing. Then, finally, with a voice so soft I barely heard it. "I thought I raised you better than this." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" He turned his head. Met my eyes. "You bring me here to die, and I have to listen to your wife betray you 2 doors down." My throat tightened. "So it's true." He closed his eyes. "Frank is a coward. Lena's worse. But you're the one I pity. Because you already knew. And you're still here." I felt the floor tilt under me. "Why didn't you tell me?" Would you have believed me? He was right. I sat there in silence, listening to his breathing, thin, uneven, but still going. Do you want me to confront them? His eyes stayed shut. I want peace. Whatever scraps I can get. A tear slid down his cheek. He didn't wipe it. I just didn't think I'd die in a house full of ghosts. Outside the room, the floor creaked. Someone had been listening. I opened the door just fast enough to catch Lena's silhouette retreating down the hall. She didn't turn around. Lena. Her footsteps paused, then resumed. Soft. Measured. Lena. Stop. She froze halfway down the hall, one hand resting against the wall, as if steadying herself. I walked up behind her, slowly, like I was approaching a wounded animal. How much did you hear? Her voice was a whisper. Enough. I stared at the back of her head, at the dark strands pulled into a loose bun. The way her shoulders rose and fell. She didn't turn to face me. So it's true. A pause. Then, yes. The word hit harder than I expected. A small sound, but it felt like a bomb going off in my chest. I leaned against the wall beside her, my breath suddenly shallow. How long? I don't know. A few months. Maybe longer. Maybe. She turned then. Her eyes were glassy, not from tears, but from exhaustion. From having nowhere left to run. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she said. It didn't start with your dad moving in. That just pushed it over the edge. When Frank came around more. We were both just unraveling. Unraveling. I repeated the word like it was foreign. While my father was dying in the next room. Don't, she said, wincing. No. You don't get to flinch now. You don't get to feel hurt. She looked away. Was it every night? Silence. Lena. Was it every night? She nodded, barely perceptible. I wanted to scream. But something in my chest stayed eerily calm. Numb. Does Frank know that I know? No. Good. I pushed off the wall, walked past her without another word, and down to the basement. Frank was asleep on the couch, mouth open slightly, a throw blanket pulled up to his waist. There was something obscene about the peacefulness of it. I stood over him for a long moment. Then, quietly, I took the TV remote from the table and slammed it against the wall. He jolted awake, eyes wide, scrambling to sit up. What the hell? Get out. He blinked at me. Out. Now. Jason, Don't say a word. Not one. If you speak, I swear to God, I will drag you out by your throat. He stood, hands raised. All right. All right. I'll go. You should have stayed gone the day my mother died. His face went pale. He started gathering his things, moving quickly, clumsily. I didn't move until the door slammed behind him. And then I stood alone in that room, the silence now roaring. Upstairs, Lena was crying. And somewhere down the hall, my father was dying, piece by piece. And I had no idea how I was supposed to go on from here. The house felt emptier without Frank. Not quieter. Just emptier. Like the space he once filled carried an echo now, of footsteps, of shame, of things unsaid. I didn't speak to Lena for 2 days. We passed each other in hallways like ghosts. She tried, once, to start a conversation over breakfast. Said something about needing to call the hospice nurse. But I just nodded and walked away. Even breathing near her made my skin crawl. Dad asked about Frank. I told him he was gone. Nothing more. He didn't push. On the 3rd day, Dad took a turn. It started with a cough. Wet, gurgling, painful. By afternoon, he was barely conscious. Hospice arrived, adjusted his meds, spoke softly, touched my shoulder in ways that were meant to comfort but didn't reach me. That evening, Lena knocked gently on the guest room door. "Can I come in?" I was sitting in the chair beside him, same place she used to sit before everything rotted. I didn't answer. She came in anyway. "I want to help," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. "I know I don't deserve." "Then don't ask to," I interrupted. She swallowed whatever apology was forming. We sat in silence as Dad lay between us, drifting in and out. His lips moved sometimes, whispering to people he used to know. My mother. His brothers. Names I hadn't heard in decades. At some point, he opened his eyes. Looked at Lena. And for the first time in days, he spoke clearly. "You need to leave." She blinked. "What?" "You heard me. But I won't die with you in this house." Lena turned to me, her face pale. "Jason." I didn't move. Didn't speak. "Please," she whispered. "Don't do this." "He is." My voice surprised even me. Cold. Final. She stood there for a moment, her hands clenched at her sides. Then she left. The sound of the front door closing was soft. But I felt it in my chest like a hammer. Dad looked at me. Eyes clear. "Thank you." I took his hand. "You can rest now." He died 2 hours later. No last words. No dramatic fade out. Just a long exhale, and then nothing. The nurse checked his pulse. Nodded once. I didn't cry. I sat there with him until the sun began to rise. And in that pale light, I realized I hadn't just lost my father. I'd lost everything I thought was true. And what came next, what came after grief, was something far more dangerous. The funeral was small. Just me, David, a few old neighbors, and 2 of Dad's drinking buddies from his warehouse days. They stood off to the side in windbreakers, holding plastic cups of bitter coffee like it was holy water. No suits. No speeches. Lena didn't come. I told her not to. She asked if she could send flowers. I said he wouldn't want them. And he wouldn't have. Not from her. After the burial, I stood by his grave long after the others had gone. David offered to stay, but I shook my head. I needed the silence. The wind whipped through the trees with the kind of sound that only happens in cemeteries, like the dead whispering secrets to each other. I tried to say something. Something about forgiveness. About failure. About the war between love and blindness. But nothing came out. So I just stood there. Cold. Still. Trying to feel something that wasn't rage. That night, the house was unbearable. Too quiet. Every floorboard seemed to groan with his absence. The guest room door stayed shut. I couldn't bring myself to open it. I went downstairs, poured myself a drink, then another. Somewhere around midnight, I opened Lena's old drawer. I didn't plan to. I don't know why I did. It was empty except for one thing, a small, leather-bound notebook. The kind she used for meal plans and grocery lists. Only it wasn't that. It was filled with dates. Times. Details. At first, I didn't understand. Then I realized, they were meetings. Encounters. With Frank. It went back almost a year. Most entries were innocent, shared dinners, long walks. But somewhere in the middle, the words changed. They got shorter. Colder. One line marked the first night I was out of town. Even before my dad moved in. Hotels. Quick visits. Long walks while I was out of town. One entry chilled my blood. Told Frank about the inheritance. He says he has a plan. Trust him. Another. Need to talk to Jay soon. Can't keep lying. Frank wants to move. Wait until after. After what? The last entry was dated 4 days before Dad died. F says Jay won't do anything. He's too soft. If he finds out, we make it his fault. Let him fall apart. Easier that way. My hands were shaking. I reread the page 3 times. Then I got up. Walked to the bathroom. Splashed cold water on my face. Looked in the mirror. I didn't recognize the man staring back. Too soft. They thought I was too soft. I stared into the mirror until my reflection steadied. And in that moment, something in me hardened. This wasn't over. Not even close. The next morning, I took the notebook and drove to David's house. He was out back chopping wood, even though the weather didn't call for it. That was his version of therapy: repetitive motion, clean lines, split logs. I stood by the fence until he noticed me. "You look like hell," he said. "That's going around." He handed me a bottle of water and nodded toward the porch. I followed him there and sat down, the notebook heavy in my jacket pocket. "She kept records," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Of what?" I pulled the book out. Dropped it between us. "Frank. The affair. Planning. Money." David flipped it open, read a few lines. His jaw clenched. "Jesus. I don't think Dad was ever supposed to stay with us," I said. "I think he was supposed to die somewhere else. Somewhere quiet. Out of the way." David didn't speak. Just kept reading. "She called me soft. Said I'd fall apart." He looked up then. "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because you're still standing." That night, I called Lena. She didn't answer. So I sent her a picture. The notebook. Open to the page with Frank's name and the word inheritance. She replied in under 10 seconds. "Lena, we need to talk." Me, "That's overdue." "Lena, please. Not like this." Me, "Then how?" "Nicely. In a kitchen full of ghosts." "Lena, you don't understand." Me, "I understand more than you think." She stopped replying. I didn't expect her to. 2 days later, I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Frank. His voice was low, unsure. "Jason, look, man. I don't know what she told you. But Lena's not right in the head. She twists things. Makes people believe stuff that isn't true. I didn't want any of this. Just call me back, okay?" I didn't. I forwarded the message to David. He responded with one word. "Coward." I agreed. Later that week, I contacted Dad's attorney. He'd left everything to me. The house, the truck, the account he never touched but kept adding to each year like clockwork. The will was simple. Clean. No surprises. Except one. A sealed envelope. Handwritten. "Jason," it read. "If you're reading this, it means I finally got some peace. I hope the world feels lighter now. I know you're hurting. And I wish I could take that from you. But there's something you need to understand. You didn't fail me. They did. You loved blindly. That's not weakness. That's what makes you different from men like Frank. Burn the bridge if you have to. Just make sure you walk away with your soul intact. I believe in you. Always did. Dad." I read it twice. Then I lit a match. Not for the letter. For the notebook. Page by page, I fed it into the fireplace. And I didn't stop until the ashes turned cold. Time passed, but it didn't heal. The house stayed silent. I stopped sleeping in the master bedroom. Couldn't bear the closet, the smell of her shampoo still lingering in the fabric. I moved into the guest room, the one Dad died in. It felt wrong, but less wrong than the alternative. People stopped checking in. Grief has an expiration date in other people's minds. But mine stayed fresh. Lena didn't call again. Frank didn't either. Maybe they were together. Maybe not. I didn't care. That was the lie I told myself every morning. One night, I saw her car. Parked outside the house across the street. Engine off. Lights out. Just sitting there, like a shadow that didn't know where to go. I watched from behind the curtain for over an hour. She never got out. Eventually, she drove away. 3 days later, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. It was from Lena. Jason. I know you won't believe anything I say. And maybe you shouldn't. But I need to say it anyway. I never wanted to fall out of love with you. I just got lost. Frank wasn't the plan. Not at first. It just happened slowly, in moments we didn't mean. I didn't see how far I'd gone until I was already drowning. I know sorry doesn't mean anything. But I am. I didn't think you'd forgive me. I hoped you would hate me. That would make it easier. But I keep thinking about the man you used to be, the one who held my hand in the grocery store, who left notes in my coat pocket when I was sick. I miss that version of us. You deserved better. You always did. L. I didn't cry. I didn't even get angry. I just folded the letter and placed it in the drawer beside Dad's envelope. Then I locked it. That weekend, I started cleaning out the garage. There was a trunk in the corner I hadn't touched in years. Old family photos, Christmas lights that didn't work, a dusty toolbox missing half the wrenches. Underneath it all, I found something I forgot existed, a framed photo of Lena and me on our wedding day. I stared at it a long time. We looked happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy. But photos lie. I left it there. Didn't hang it up. Didn't smash it. Just left it. Let it rot, the way our vows had. The letter stayed locked in the drawer for weeks. Every night I'd walk past it, a faint pull behind my ribs. Not regret. Not nostalgia. Just gravity. I began walking in the evenings. Around the block. Past the church Dad used to complain about because the bells were off-key. Past the diner where Lena and I had our first date. Places that used to mean something. Now, they were just street corners and lit windows. One night, as I rounded the far side of the neighborhood, I saw Frank. He was coming out of a liquor store, brown paper bag in hand, eyes sunken like something had been drained from him. He didn't see me. But I followed him. Just for a block. Just long enough to feel the temptation. The things I could say. The things I could do. But I didn't. He wasn't worth the breath. I turned back home, my fists aching. That night, I dreamt of my dad. We were in the backyard. The one from my childhood home. He was younger, healthier. Shirt sleeves rolled up. A beer in one hand, a rake in the other. He looked at me and smiled. Don't water dead plants, son. I woke up before I could ask what he meant. But I knew. The next morning, I opened the drawer. Took out both envelopes. One from Lena. One from Dad. I read them again, side by side. And then I did something I hadn't done in months. I got in the truck. I drove. The beach was 3 hours away. A place Dad used to take us every summer when we were kids. He always said the ocean had a way of scrubbing your soul clean, if you let it. I sat on the sand, the wind loud in my ears, the smell of salt thick in my nose. I closed my eyes. And I let it come. The grief. The rage. The love that had nowhere left to go. I cried until I couldn't anymore. Then I walked down to the water, pulled the 2 letters from my pocket, and watched as the tide took them. I didn't need their words anymore. I had my own. And I was ready to start using them again. That night, I started writing. Not to Lena. Not to Frank. But to myself. To the version of me I buried months ago. I told him I was sorry. I told him I was coming back. And this time, I meant it. I didn't expect anything to happen after that. But healing has a strange way of moving, it doesn't announce itself. It creeps in quietly. Like light under a closed door. The nightmares slowed. The silence in the house no longer pressed down on me like a weight. I started making coffee again, not just brewing it, but actually sitting down and drinking it. I even laughed once. It startled me. A stupid sitcom on TV. A line I wouldn't remember if I tried. But it cracked something open, and I let it. A month passed. Then another. The mailbox stayed empty. No more letters. No calls. No Frank. No Lena. I saw her once, from a distance. She was walking alone near the park. Hair pulled back, oversized sweater, hands in her pockets. She looked smaller. Not physically, but in presence. She didn't see me. And I didn't approach. Some things don't need revisiting. One morning, I found myself in the attic. I wasn't sure why. Maybe looking for something to fix, or maybe I just needed dust on my hands again. That's where I found it. Dad's old camcorder. I brought it downstairs, charged it, popped in a tape. The screen flickered, then cleared. It was a backyard birthday. Me, maybe 10. David, younger. Cake, streamers, Dad grilling in the background. And Lena. She was there, younger too. Arms around my shoulders. Smiling. It was so pure it almost didn't feel real. I watched it twice. Then I turned it off. Not because it hurt. Because it was enough. That memory didn't belong to the betrayal. It didn't need to be erased. It just needed to be acknowledged. That night, I took out a fresh notebook. And I began writing again. Not to remember. But to begin. I wrote about the man I wanted to become. Not defined by what was taken from him. But by what he chose to rebuild. Word by word. Line by line. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. I felt like someone who had come back from the edge. Not whole. But healing. A year passed. The seasons turned like they always do, oblivious to the chaos we survive in between. Spring came soft and green. I planted a tree in the backyard, near where Dad used to sit with his coffee. A maple. Young, but already strong. I didn't say a prayer when I put it in the ground, but I did press my hand to the soil longer than necessary. It felt like something sacred. I saw Lena again. She was at the farmer's market, carrying a cloth bag of apples, a little boy tugging at her sleeve. At first, I thought the child might be Frank's. But then I saw her sister a few steps behind, laughing, chasing another toddler. Lena looked different. Worn in a way that felt familiar. Our eyes met. Just for a second. She didn't smile. Neither did I. But there was something there. Not love. Not hate. Recognition. And maybe that was enough. That night, I found an old photo of Dad and me, arms around each other, grinning like idiots, holding a fish neither of us wanted to clean. I framed it. Put it on my desk. Next to the new notebook. Pages still empty. Waiting. There's no revenge in this story. No dramatic justice. No courtroom reckoning. Only a man learning how to breathe again. How to trust slow mornings. How to sit with memory and not flinch. Some days are harder than others. Some days I still want to scream. But most days, I write. And in those pages, I find pieces of myself I thought were gone. Buried under betrayal. Resurrected in the quiet. This isn't a love story. It's not even a heartbreak story. It's a story about survival. About how even in the darkest corners of grief and rage, there is still something soft waiting for you. Something honest. Something true. And if you're patient, if you're quiet enough, you just might hear it whisper back.